Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Snowball Fight, and I'm sipping on some sweet cinnamon tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I will call brown, Mars black, fire red, purple violet, and cobalt blue. And of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a 7-inch wide paper plate that we'll use to make a perfectly round snowball. I've got a standard number 2 pencil, and then I have 2 brushes. I have a 1/2-inch wide flat bristle brush, and then I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can change those up too if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paint and brushes and all the good stuff in between, including the fancy paper plate. So that's down there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our sky, but what I'm going to first do is just draw a little horizon line with my pencil. So we'll start with the pencil and then we'll shift to our large bristle brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a marker about halfway up or down the left hand side. So somewhere in about this range. It could be a little higher or a little lower. And then on the right hand side I'm going to make myself a marker about 1/3 of the way down my canvas. So to figure out where 1/3 of the way is, you can kind of eyeball yourself the halfway point. Then you go about halfway between there and the top of your canvas, and the 1/3 of the way is somewhere in the middle of those. And you could just make yourself a little bit of a marker. I'm going to connect these two with a fun winter kind of roly-poly hill. You can make yours look whatever way that you want. I'm just going to give mine a little bit of a hill over here and just kind of slope it down. The majority of this is going to be covered by a big huge snowball anyway, so it's all right however that looks. Then I'm going to put my pencil down. I'm going to pre-mix myself a gray color for my sky. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to be mixing brown, black, and white. I've already pre-mixed my color so you can kind of see where I'm headed with this. I'm going to be using about equal parts of my black and my brown, and then just a little bit of white will help you to get into this vicinity. You don't have to have yours exactly the same color as mine. That's a little dark, so I'm going to add a bit more white into it. This will turn a little bit darker as it dries, so just kind of visually plan for that. There, that's looking pretty good to me. So once you've got the color that you're looking for, then what we're going to do is we're just going to paint in the majority of the sky with this color. What I'll do is, as I get down towards the bottom of my horizon where it's meeting my hill, I'm going to add a little bit of additional black to my sky color, so it just kind of dips down behind that hill and gives us a great kind of visual experience for our little boy and our snowball to just kind of pop out of the darkness. So I'm just bringing this all the way down to this hill in through here. I'm just using a left to right brush stroke. If you bump into your hill, that's okay. Just paint right into it. We can modify it when we go to add when we go to paint the hill anyways. So I'm just going left to right, giving myself a nice even paint coat in through here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my gray plus a teeny bit of black paint. You don't need a lot. The black will really turn dark quickly for you, so you can certainly make it as light or as dark as you want. And I'm still going to continue to use a left to right brush stroke as opposed to painting around my hills. So I'm going to keep my brush stroke left to right so that way it looks like the hill is going to be sitting in front of it. I think I want this to go just a touch darker, just so we have a nice effect, making that sky a little bit lighter as it goes towards the top. And then once you've got this step all nice and done, we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our snowy hill. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black, blue, white, and my gray color that I had for my sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it really dark down at the bottom, almost black, but not all the way black, pretty darn dark. And then as I work my way towards the top of the hill, I'm going to get it lighter and lighter. So I'm going to start with black, blue, and a touch of my gray on my brush at the same time. I really just want to give this a lot of information that this is a hill and it's going far down, and that where the child is sitting is the top of the hill. So in order to accomplish that, having this darker tone down at the bottom will really help to sell that story. And I'm still just picking up those three colors, black, blue, and my gray. And I'm using a left to right brush stroke. Sometimes you'll see I'm almost like crisscrossing it in like a figure 8 type of brush stroke. I'll do it like this so you can kind of see it a little bit better. So that way the colors really start to blend together. As I'm coming up the hill, I'm picking up less black and more gray and blue. And as I come up this hill, I want it to look nice and cool. So I'm still using a little bit of that blue, but now I'm going to start to pick up white. So I've got gray, blue, and white on my brush at the same time. And I'm just kind of working my way up towards the top of the hill. No more picking up black, just picking up the white, gray, and blue. And as I'm going towards the top, I'm utilizing more white on my brush without washing my brush. So because I'm not washing my brush, what's going to happen is the other colors will work their way off of my brush. So I still am provided with these beautiful kind of cool tones to the snow, but it doesn't turn all the way white on me. I want my white to kind of be reserved for the exterior snow on the snowball, and maybe some fine little details around my pile of snowballs that my child is playing with. So I don't want this to necessarily go all the way white on me. If yours does go all the way white, you can certainly dull it down a little bit with either a little bit of gray or a little bit of the blue, but I am consciously trying to make it so it doesn't go all the way white. So now I've got this all covered. Now what I do is I just kind of keep softening it. So I'm just going to kind of, as it's drying, just move my brush kind of left to right. You could do little circles if you wanted it to look a little bit fluffier. You can certainly give it whatever type of texture that you want. Again, this area in through here is going to be really covered with a big snowball, so you can certainly, have fun with that. If you want it to look like there's some peaks and valleys, you can certainly pick up a little bit more white and give it a little bit more of a peak, but we'll be doing little adjusting details as we put our snowball on and put our boy on. So know that if you do have any little tweaks that you want to make, you can either make them later, or you can let this dry and just do a second coat on it. So wherever you want to take yours, feel free to do that. And then we're going to be using our our large brush and our paper plate for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this brush and take out your paper plate with this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our snowball. our big one. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my gray, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to be using my paper plate to give myself a circular type of shape. You could certainly use your pencil to draw around this, but I'm going to use my brush. I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step that you want to make sure that your canvas is dry, especially where you're going to put the snowball. So this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to do with my plate, if you don't have a 7-inch paper plate, you can certainly draw yourself your own circle. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to have it maybe about 3 inches from the top of my canvas and maybe about 4 inches from the right side of my canvas. So I would say somewhere in like this vicinity works out pretty darn well. And then, yeah, somewhere like this. That looks well good to me. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a very tiny bit of my gray and a little bit of blue on my brush. Yeah, I suppose you could put gray, blue, and a little bit of white. It doesn't matter the color as long as you can see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of ride my brush along the edge of my paper plate. So this is going to give me a good enough circle. I don't need it to be a perfect circle because it's a snowball, and I do remember the snowballs I used to make as a kid that were never perfect. So you can certainly have yours being a little bit of an odd shape if you want to. And then once I've got this on here, I'm just going to remove my paper plate. And I'm going to be using those same colors, gray, blue, and white. And I'm going to dot the entire snowball with these colors. So gray, blue, and white. I'm applying the paint in like a stippling type of technique. I'm going to go right to my edge, and you're going to have some light spots and you're going to have some dark spots. I'm making my edge on the fluffier side, so it looks like this snowball has a lot of thickness to it. And I'm not terribly concerned about how beautiful this comes out at this point. I'm just utilizing these colors as my base for the snowball. So when I do put the dimension of the highlights and the shadows on it, making it three-dimensional looking later, this is going to give me that good base, and it's starting the texture for me for that end result. So again, just kind of blue, gray, and white. And as you're going through this process, especially when you're in the snow area, down at the bottom, the hill area, you just want to make sure that you can personally see the difference between the snowball and your background. So if you want it a little bit more blue or a little bit more gray or a little bit more white, feel free to do so. And again, we'll be making the second layer will give it all the dimension that we'll need. So once you've got this done, and if yours doesn't have varying shades in it, that's okay. Just something that's going to give you a good base coat works. And then we're going to be utilizing our pencil for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your pencil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw ourselves an outline for our little person who is being mischievous and throwing some snowballs at the viewer. I'm going to be using my pencil. I'm going to guide you through some basic shapes, and you can certainly tweak this and make it into however kind of large of a person that you want, but I'm going to make mine pretty darn small, so it is relative to the size of this big snowball. I want this snowball to look like it's really close to the viewer, so I'm making my person really small. It's going to be right about in through here, so I'm going to have it, if this is the bottom of my snowball, the bottom of my feet are a little bit above that, and then the top of my head is going to be maybe about, I would say, an inch or inch and a half, 2 inches down from the top of my big snowball and over in through here. So that's kind of like where the top and the bottom are. I'm going to start with the little legs and then work my way up. I'm going to have my, and your hill might be shaped a little bit differently than mine is, but I'm going to have my little person kind of leaning over a little bit, and the bottom of the jacket is going to be right about where the top of my hill is. But again, yours might be a little bit in a different position than mine. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a diagonal line that crosses over into the sky a little bit, and it's maybe about, I would say, an inch and a half wide or so, something like that. And you can just pull up those little corners so you can kind of see the end of it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this front leg on first, and I'm going to come in from the edge of my jacket a little bit in through there. I'm gonna, about halfway between these two, the edges of the jacket, I'm gonna come down maybe about a third to a quarter of an inch in through here. That's gonna be like where the two legs meet in the middle. And then I'm gonna just bring this down on the left side, and then on the right side at a little bit of an angle. So that's gonna give him good balance as he's throwing his snowballs. I'm going to put the bottom of the pants in through here, and then maybe just the little edge of the foot with his little boot on in through there. So that's going to be the right leg. The left leg is going to start just a little bit shy of the corner of that jacket. And then this one's going to look like it's kicking out a little bit. So I'm going to bring this down at a little bit of an angle, and then we'll consider this to be about the knee of the leg. And then I'm going to bring it right to about here, which is going to be the end of the snow pants. And then in through here, wherever this is, you just kind of go diagonally. I'm making this about the same width as the right leg. And I'm going to just kind of kick this out like this. Maybe this is going to be the bottom of a snow pants. And maybe we see the little edge of the foot somewhere in through here. So then I'm going to put the torso on. So what I'm going to do is the torso is going to be kind of leaning forward towards the snowball a little bit. So if I come up about the same height as what your legs are, so you can kind of measure what your legs are and then go up at a little bit of a diagonal. That's about as tall as you want your torso. So it's going to be somewhere in through here. And I think my pencil might be a little dark on this dark background. So I'm going to actually switch to a white pencil so you can see where I'm headed when I'm in this dark region. There we go. So I'm going to connect this dot to these bottom two corners with kind of a loose rectangle type of shape. This is going to be the front of his chest in through here. And then I just bring it down something like that in order to have the front part of the jacket. And then over on this back side, I'm going to do the same thing. And you can have it ripple a little bit, so that way it doesn't look like a real straight line, and it'll look a little bit more natural, like it's got a little bit of movement into it. It's going to have an arm that's going to come, this is about where the shoulder is. So I'm going to just bring a little bit of a diagonal down in this direction with the edge of the sleeve somewhere in through here, and then a little bit of a hand. I'm going to switch to my pencil just so you can see what I'm going to do with the little hand. This is just going to be a little mitten hand that we'll see the front side of it as he's hucking his snowball at you. So as far as the top part, I'm going to put a little tiny face in through here. So this is just going to be a little oval type of shape. There's going to be the edge of the jacket is going to come over here, or a scarf over here on the right hand side. Going to put a big hat on the top of his head, so he's going to stay nice and warm. So something like this will give me a little bit of a hat, and then I'm going to have a scarf coming out this back side. So we've got just these little bits of a scarf coming out into here. I think my chalk will work a little bit better than this pencil. There we go. So just making sure that you can see it. So we've got a little scarf in through there. We've got a hat. We've got a little area for the face. And of course, the other arm is going to be on the other side, so we won't see that. So that's all I'm doing for my outline. You can make any little adjustments that you want. And then we're going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for our boy, as well as we're painting a pile of snowballs. So I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm going to be using are black, brown, blue, gray, and white. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do my boy first, and I'm going to start with his face. So I'm going to just put brown paint on my brush, and I'm painting this little area in through here with just brown paint. And then I'm going to paint the entire rest of my boy with black paint. So black is going to act as my base coat for all of these pieces of clothing. So you can bring it right to the edge of your pencil mark. And if you don't bring it to the edge of your pencil mark, that's okay too, because when we paint the color on it, you'll be able to hide any little edges that you might not have gotten while you were doing the base coat. You can also leave little spaces between items. So if this is your scarf and you want to maintain the information that that's the scarf and this is the jacket, you can certainly just leave a little space between your out or the base color and the edge. So wherever you have that pencil, you could certainly just leave a little tiny sliver. Same thing with the face. Wherever you need that visual reference, you can certainly just leave it. And if you don't need it, just paint over it. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this little edge to the scarf over in through here, so he's really nice and warm. And then I'm just making sure that I've got this whole thing. Where the arm is coming out of the body right now is going to look a little funky until we put the highlights and the clothing color on. So don't worry about it looking odd right now. Just trust the placement of it, and if you've put it in a similar place than mine, it will all work out. I'm going to just paint this in black, giving this little kick up where I want those fingers to look like they have curled under after they let go of the snowball. Making sure that I've got this whole area. And again, just the little kickouts of that jacket where it's meeting the legs, that's going to help to give you the visual cue as you're painting the colored parts of the clothing in later. That will help you to decide or understand where those different pieces are. And again, just kind of going right to the end. And I like to use a little bit of movement in the edges of my or the sides of my clothing, just so I don't have very firm straight lines. It looks to me more natural when you can see a little bit of the ripple in the fabric, or the tilt of the leg, or the skewed position that a little boy's knee would be in if he's in this type of pitching position. And then once I've got this part done, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put a pile of snowballs right next to him. So just getting this little pant leg and the little foot in through here. And now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. My snowballs I'm going to have just really near him. So I'm going to load my brush with the same colors I did the base here. So it's going to be blue, gray, and white are going to be the three colors on my brush. I'm going to make like a little pyramid of snowballs. So I'm going to come a little bit below his foot in through here. And then I'm just going to kind of make these circular type of shapes. They don't have to be perfect. I'm just going to kind of pile them up on each other. And I don't have to have the same quantity of color on my brush. I think actually I'm going to use a little bit of black too. Now that I'm getting into it, I feel like I want to have a little bit of darker ones down at the bottom. So I picked up a touch of black just to get some little crevices in between the snowballs, so they look like they've got some depth to them, so they're not all just flat. And I just am doing these circular type of motions, so alternating between black, gray, blue, and white. And I'm going to give myself this whole pile of snowballs. You can have these little, I just picked up a little bit of white just to give the insinuation of the edges of the snowballs. And of course, you can have as many as you want. You can have some coming over on the sides and a little pile in through here. Just make it messy. Make it like, a 7-year-old boy built this pile of snowballs and he's really excited to throw one at you. So make this as an exciting pile of snowballs. Maybe there's a couple hanging out over on the edge. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be utilizing this small brush for, actually, let's use the big brush for the next step. So put your small brush away, take out your big brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to be finishing this large snowball and the snow that is underneath the snow pile and the little boy. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm using are blue, gray, white, and I might use a little bit of black as well, but I'll let you know if I do that. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to tackle the snowball first. We'll be putting all the light fluffy stuff that is spraying as the snowball is flying. We'll do that later. Right now we're just going to focus on the actual snowball itself and then any little information down below here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just white paint on my large brush, and I'm going to be doing this all with this stippling type of technique. I'm going pretty much in the center of the ball to get it really bright in the center as it's coming right at the viewer, and then I'm going to let my brush kind of run out of paint as I'm going towards the edges. I will start to pick up some of my gray and blue also along the edges, but because we have that really soft under color to this is going to provide us with some great texture as we're making our way around the ball. So right now I'm going to pick up, without washing my brush, a little bit of gray and blue, and I'm going to get these to blend in as they're going towards the edge of the snowball. So I like to kind of overlap the lighter part that we just did in the center with these edges that I'm making my way to, because I want this to look like it's a real round object and that it's got some great dimension along the edges to it. So I'm just kind of keep tapping and dotting my brush so these two colors begin to work their way into one another, and you can see they're really starting to blend and looking nice. Now as I get towards those edges, I don't want it to look like I'm not attending to them and giving them a second coat. So I just want to make sure that I tap those colors in along the edges as well. You could even, in an area like this where these two colors are pretty similar to one another, this is where you could use a little bit of black paint as well. So I'm going to pick up my blue and my gray and a teeny tiny bit of black paint so I can give almost maybe a little bit more of a shadow over here on the edge of this of the ball over on this side. So this way you'll see the contrast in front of the background. And then I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel if I have too much black, and then I just start tapping it in and blending it in with that lighter region. And you might find if this doesn't, if it doesn't blend as much as you want it to on the first shot, you can always just kind of keep adding layers until you feel like you've got that softness to it and that dimensional element. I'm picking up some more white as I go back towards that center. So don't feel like once you've used the white that you can't pick it up again, because I like to continue to just build that brightness within the center and just continue to tap it and make sure that it is fading out into the darker edges of the ball. And of course the ball doesn't have to be perfectly circular, so as you're going through the process, if yours ends up a little wobbly or bigger on one side than the other side, that is totally fine. That would definitely resemble one of the snowballs that I would make when I was a kid. They were never round, nor were my snowmen. My snowmen always looked little, like they had very unique shapes to them. So that's the joy of making items in the snow. And then once you've got your snowball done, you can certainly let it dry, and if you have anything else to do on it, great. But I'm going to go ahead and put some information down below here. I'm not even going to wash my brush right now. I'm just going to use the remnants that are on there from my snowball, from my big one, and I just really want to give a little bit of dimension down underneath this pile of snowballs down in through here. You could certainly use your medium brush if you wanted to, but my goal here is just to make it look like there's a little bit of fluff or information, or he has tousled up some of the snow a little bit. I just picked up a touch more white paint just so I can give, maybe there's little piles, or maybe he's kicked up a little bit of snow here or there, or maybe it's, built up a little bit. Maybe he's kind of building a little fort that his snowballs are sitting in. I'm going to pick up now a little bit of my gray and blue just to make sure that this transitions well outside of my main area. So I just picked up a little bit of my gray and my blue just to get this little area to make it make sense, like it's almost, just fading out into the rest of the ground in through here. And if you want to put a little shadow under him, you certainly could. I don't think it's really that necessary, but if you wanted to, you could. And then just do any little fiddling that you want. Do any more to your big snowball if you want. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the boy. We're going to put the colors on his clothing, and we'll put a little cute face on him, and then he'll be done. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are purple, red, white, and black, and I might use a little brown, but if I do, I'll let you know. So I'm gonna have him wearing a purple scarf, a purple mitten, purple pants, a red jacket, and a red hat. You can certainly change your color scheme however you'd like to, but I'm gonna start with my purple pieces of clothing. So the purple that I'm using is pretty translucent, and it will nearly disappear on top of the black. So I must always use a tiny bit of white if I want that purple to show up. So I've got purple on my brush with a teeny tiny bit of white paint. You can always make it lighter or darker or whatever you want. Most of the clothing is going to almost look black, but the blue or the purple is going to give you some sort of color to it. So I've got purple with a teeny touch of white on my brush. I'm going to put lighter areas where I want the viewer to see the purple the most. So that's going to be maybe on the back of the legs, something in through here, maybe a little bit on the cuff of the pants, somewhere in through here. It might need a little bit more white, and you can tell as I'm doing this that the paint, if I don't have enough white in my equation, it will pretty much disappear on me. So just using that little bit of white in there will help out. And if you feel like you go too bright or too white on it, then just put a little bit of black back on, and you can dull it down that way. And I'm just making some winter pants. They don't have to be anything super fancy. I'm just bringing a little bit of this purple color in them, leaving, you know, some of the black showing. Maybe a little cuff at the bottom of the pants will help to give them a little bit of a little bit more information, so you can just put a little bit lighter of a version down at the bottom of the pants, maybe a little bit lighter at this knee in through here, so maybe it looks like it's got a little bit of you know, bend to it or whatever. And of course, if you do something that you don't like I said, just let it dry and then put some black back on top of it. Or if you want your clothing to be more vibrant in tone, put a lighter base, like use more white, let it dry, and then you can add the color on top of it. I'm going to move up to the scarf. So again, I just have purple with a little bit of white on my brush. And I'm really not looking to make this a solid color. I'm really just looking to give the accent of this purple tone in through here. I want a little bit of this scarf to kind of look like it's underneath his hat a little bit too, like it's covering up part of his face, or maybe it's tucked underneath his hat. I remember when I would wear my scarves as a kid, man, they were wrapped around my head like 3 times, and then I'd put my hat on top. Whatever kept my head warm was the way that I did it. So I'm being inspired by that on this little kid's head. So I've got purple, part of the scarf is over on this side as well, wrapped around inside his coat. Lots of purple into there. Gonna give him a little purple glove or mitten in through here. So just a little bit of purple and white on that outside edge. And of course, I'm gonna leave a little bit of black on the underside, so it gives it a little bit of dimension. Maybe a touch more white on this little part of the mitten that pops out the most, that's looking like it's the closest to the viewer, something like that. And then I'm just gonna wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put the red clothing on now. So just red paint on my brush is how I'm going to create the illusion of this arm in through here. So again, red on the black, you're going to see the black through the red, but the thicker your paint is, the less you're going to see through it. So if I want a vibrant red area, I'm going to use a lot of red paint. If I want it to look dark, like I have a shadow, then I wouldn't use a lot of red paint. I'm going to blend that out in a minute, but right now I'm just kind of getting my brighter areas on so I can show you what I'm talking about here. I don't have much red paint on my brush right now, and as I am moving up towards where the arm is going to be, I'm just blending it into that black, and when it dries, it will look like it's in the shadow here and it's coming out into the focal point. I wanted this arm to be pretty vibrant, so I put quite a bit of red on here, and then I can just blend it out, maybe a little bit of darkness in the ripple of the wrist, and I'm just going to bring this up to where I feel that it belongs, which is going to be the shoulder area, and I'll get it to kind of blend out just a little bit. I want you to be able to tell that this is the arm, but I don't necessarily need it to be the focal point, I guess. I mean, I want you to understand that this is the arm that's throwing, but it has cloth. So it can have ripples in it. It can be brighter in some areas, but it's going to fade back into where that shoulder is. So I'm just going to let it get darker as it goes into that region. And then over here on the front of the jacket, I'll put a little bit on there too, but not a lot, because the dominant red is going to be on this sleeve itself. So I've got a little bit of red on my brush just to make sure that we know that that's the other side of the jacket in through there. And then just let it dry, because you might find that you want more or less of the red color. So, you know, or you might find that you want your arm to be wider or more narrow or whatever the case may be. So just let it dry for a minute, see if you need to do any adjusting to it. I'm going to move up to the hat. So the hat, I'm going to have like two kind of tiers of the hat. I'll have this rim type of part that's going to have a lot of red on it, and it's going to get a little bit darker as it goes towards that face, and then I'll put a lot of red up at the top. I might pick up a little bit more black just so I can make sure that I have some good darkness in between these two like areas of the hat, so it looks like this is kind of like bumping up, like it's a knit hat or something. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint so I can just make sure that I have a good little shadow in between these two areas. And of course you could certainly make yours darker or lighter, and of course wait for it to dry to see if there's anything more that you need to do. I'm putting just a little bit more black down at the bottom of it too, just so it gets nice and dark, and we've got some good, yeah, that's cute. That's a cute hat. All right, so now I'm going to move to the face. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. The face, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put very little detail to it. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. I'm putting little eyes up by the hat, so it looks like his face is down a little bit. So I'm really just going to rub in a teeny tiny bit of black paint up towards that the edge of the hat, something like that. I'm going to put a teeny tiny mouth down in through here, something like this. And you can have him smiling, you can have him grimacing, you can have this mouth whatever way you want. If you want him to look a little smiley, just kind of bring it up a little bit in those corners. Then this is less is more kind of step. You don't need a lot of paint. I'm going to wash and dry my brush right now, and I'm going to pre-mix myself like a little pinky tone that I can use for a cute nose and some rosy cheeks. So I've got my red in through here. I'm going to add a little bit of white so I can get like a pink type of tone in through here. I want to make sure it definitely resembles pink and not red, because I don't want it to fight with his hat. So I've got pink here. You can always put a tiny bit of brown in it as well, so it kind of dulls it down a little bit, but it is going to be sitting on top of brown. So whatever you make on your palette will end up a little bit duller on that face. So just kind of plan for that. So this is about where I'm starting. And again, I have very little bit of paint on my brush, and I mean very tiny, tiny bit. And I'm just going to kind of tap in a little bit of a nose. I'm going to put a little cheek on him too. So just a teeny little nose in through there, a little pink in my cheek. You can even put a little pink on the chin, but you don't really need a whole heck of a lot. Once I've kind of established those little pink details, then what I can do, and again, I just did a little tiny nose, a little bit on the cheeks, and a little bit on that chin. Now what I can do is pick up that pink with a tiny bit of white on my brush, just a itty bitty bit, and give myself a little bright spot right on the tip of that nose, and you can just work it out into the rest of the nose if you want to, or even bump up the brightness on those cheeks. It's the cheeks and the nose that you want to have the brightest. And again, I am hardly doing anything. So you can, change the skin tone if you wanted to. You could put a little red in the lips if you wanted to, but less is more. And if you feel like you've gone too far, just take a little bit of brown or a little bit of black and you can kind of dull down anything. You only need the little hint, the little illusion that that's the face. And then make any little fiddles that you want, little tweaks, and then we're going to utilize our large brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting flying snow. I don't have a better word for it than that. So it's going to be all the snow that is flying through the air from this little person throwing this enormous snowball. So we'll call it flying snow. I'm going to use my large brush. The colors I'm using are white, blue, and gray. And how I'm going to do this is I want it to look very airy, almost like smoky type of misty, foggy type of look. I'm going to be using a circular type of rubbing brush stroke. You can have a little bit of moisture on your brush, but you don't want too much. I just noticed my brush was a little bit wet, so just forewarning you, it doesn't need to be too wet. Just it could have a little on it though. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to not use just white coming out of the gate. I'm going to use the 3 colors, so I have a combination of the snow tones, and then at the end I'll pick up a little bit of white and do some really bright spots, so that way you can have some dimensional type of an element to it. I want this ball to look like it is in motion, so I need to tell the viewer where it's coming from. So we're going to have an arcing type of line of this flying snow. When I recall throwing snowballs, I'm not the best thrower in the world, just for the record, but my brother could throw them better than I could. And when he threw them, his arm would go back like you're pitching a baseball. So when the arm is back, you're going to have a fluff of snow back here that will take on the journey of the snowball, but then the arm also comes down here. So there's almost like 2 lines of motion for this flying snow. So we're gonna translate that onto the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit of my gray, a tiny bit of my blue, and an itty bitty bit of my white. You can even kind of mix it together a little bit on your tray. And so little, I'd rather have to add more than to take away, so I just kind of wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I just want to kind of get my head straight and give myself an idea of where I want this to go. So I'm going to start at the upper left-hand side of my snowball, and then I know that I want this to travel up and back behind my little person. So I'm just kind of lightly going this in a circular type of direction, so it lands right about in through here. And then I'm also going to have some coming along here and ending up at his hand. So that's where it ends up, his hand ends up finally setting or sitting the most. And then I'm going to just kind of take whatever remnants are on my brush and just kind of start swirling it around my ball. Even though I don't have much on my brush at all, I'm just adding this little bit of atmospheric dimension. Now what I'm going to do the next time I go to do this, I'm going to pick up a little bit lighter version. So I'm going to have a little bit more white on my brush with my blue and my gray. So a little bit more white. And I like to just kind of build this process. And again, hardly any paint on my brush, just kind of wipe it off on your paper towel, and then you can do this little bit of a scrubbing technique. If you want to, you can also utilize a tiny bit of water on your brush, but very little bit, just a teeny tiny bit, dab it on your paper towel. That'll help you get a little bit more fluidity in the paint, and it'll allow you to kind of spread it out farther. But you don't want a ton of water, because what'll happen is you'll start to lift that paint right off of the canvas. But this will help you to get that those soft edges to it. And I'm just going to kind of bring this out along the edges. And once I've got this coming on, I'm going to start adding a little bit more white to my brush. So a little bit more white is going to start to be within my equation, and this is going to give me that even fluffier white stuff. So I know that I don't want to go all the way white, so I'm just kind of building on top of the on top of the existing layer that I started, and I just kind of keep rubbing it in. I like to wipe my brush off on my paper towel a lot. That helps to control what I'm doing and where I'm doing it. And if you ever run into an issue where you're like, oh my God, that's just too much white, I went too far, pick up some of your background gray. That's going to be your saving grace in this whole equation. So as you do this, just know that that background gray will help you if you ever bring it to a point where it's too much. And then I just kind of keep bringing it out. I'm going to bring some of the lighter version, which is a little bit of the, a little bit more white on my brush. Going to bring some of that out in through here, just so you can really get the full scope of how fluffy this snowball is and how it's kind of just ready to probably hit you in the face or hit somebody in the face. I used to always mine used to kind of hit me in the head oddly. So, this might hit you in the face, it might hit you in the head, wherever his aim is. I guess we can just duck out of the way if it's coming too close to us. And of course, I'm just continuing to brighten some of this fluffiness as I go along. I go a little bit slower when it comes to adding the brightness, because I'd rather, again, have it too dark and keep lightening it up, as opposed to just having the whole thing super bright white coming out of the gate. I want it to look like it's like that, fogginess to it. I'm going to put a teeny tiny bit more of the fogginess in through here, and then I'm going to put maybe even a little bit in front of his arm. Like, this is totally giving, he's all in it. He's even catching some of this little fluff too. So if you did like his face and you weren't sold on it, you can just put a little bit of this fluffy stuff in front of it. And then once I've got that's looking pretty good, I'm gonna put a teeny tiny bit of white paint on my brush on the corner of my brush. So I like to just kind of squish my brush on the side of my palette, so I can have control of those corners of my brush. And I'm going to put these little dots of snow, leading the viewer to understand where this ball came from and where, what the trajectory of it was. So just itty bitty dots is going to tell the story of the white, accented pieces of snow that have come flying out and kind of released themselves from the main ball. And of course, you could certainly use your small brush to do these little speckly marks, but these are the marks that are going to help to sell the story of, this all being part of the same equation. And if you go too light, just pick up some of your background gray, and you can certainly have fun with it in that way. I'm thinking, oh, maybe we want one or two more little pieces kind of flying up here, maybe coming in that direction too. And then of course, just keep fiddling with it. And we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your snow fluffed out and in its journey, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I normally sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one. I'm using my small brush. I'm using black paint. You could certainly sign yours in whatever color you want. I typically do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or your whole name. Whatever works for you is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really fun winter whimsical kind of image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.